Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told how to voice the radio. So today, I want to revisit a statement I made a little while ago. You see, when Celebrations was revealed, I told you pretty clearly that I thought it might actually be the best set ever. And I meant it, incidentally. I don't lie to you guys on this channel. My opinions change over time, and sometimes I'm wrong about stuff, shockingly. But I don't lie to you guys. And when I'm running around telling you that Celebrations might be the best set ever, I absolutely meant it. So now with Pokemon Card 151 out, and it's too early for 151. It's only just come out. In terms of the metagame impact and playability and things along those lines, it is too early to talk too much about exactly how good 151 is. We're going to have to give it some time. But we've had that time for Celebrations. So now I do think it's fair to ask the question, all right then, Celebrations, was it really the best set ever? And the thing is, there was a lot of incredibly cool stuff going on with Celebrations. Because you see, it was one of those sets, you couldn't just go and buy a pack of the set. You had to go and buy the products. But there were some amazing things going on. Like, sure, we had the Pikachu figure collection, which had the Pikachu V, the Hyganasuke Pikachu V, and the Pikachu V Max Wants a Hug, which was fine. And then we had the Charizard and Sylveon boxes that came with Lance's Charizard V and Dark Sylveon V, which were cool. But then it got really fun. Like the Elite Trainer box came with Greninja Star. Now, Star Pokemon were around years ago, long before Gen 6, when Greninja became a thing. And yet we get a Greninja Star. There was a Dragapult Prime box, and as somebody whose favourite memories of the Pokemon TCG reside in the Heart Gold Soul Silver era, this was something which I just thought was absolutely beyond amazing. We had Zacian Level X. Again, just the kind of thing we never could have seen back in the day, because Zacian's a Gen 8 Pokemon, and Level X was back in the Gen 4 era. We had all these cool things coming around, and it was amazing, and I loved it. But then, of course, the set was split into two. We had the main set. Now, the main set had a whole bunch of cards. We're going to talk about this more in a minute. But they were generally in pairs with the cards done by the same artist. So we had, the same artist doing, for instance, Reshiram and Zekrom, as an example. And they were done by Kasube, just knocking them out the park. Looked like traditional Japanese artwork, just absolutely stunning. My favourite artwork-wise, if anyone's wondering, were the Kyogre and Groudon that were done by Ryuta Fuse, who's been doing art for a long time and is just brilliant. And it was only a 25-card set because of the whole Pokemon 25 thing. And we did have, because it was 25th anniversary set, obviously. And we had the Gold Mew and the Full Art Professor's Research. And then just a bunch of cards. You could maybe count the Full Art Pikachu as well, although that was kind of easy to get. But then we also had the Classic Collection. Now, the Classic Collection was a second 25-card set. It was something like 1 in every 3 or 4 packs you would get one of the Classic Collection. But this was basically just tracing the history of the Pokemon TCG through the years. And I'm going to tell you in a minute about how the 25-card main set was way better than it had any right to be. Some of those cards are still seeing a lot of play now. But if we just start with the Classic Collection quickly, you've got the Gen 1 first partner Pokemon, including the Charizard. But then you can just keep going. I mean, to pick out some favourites, you had the Cleffa from Neo Genesis, which everybody played. The Groudon, which absolutely wrecked the first ever World Championships. The Claydol, that was a staple in like every deck, when it was around at least. The Luxray and Garchomp that made one of the coolest decks ever. Actually, the Donphan, in my opinion, the best card ever. The Mewtwo that ruled the format for years. And then, the Tapu Lele, which was a staple in every deck when it came around. That's just some of them. There were, of course, plenty others. Let's look at the Reshiram and Zekrom as well while we're here, because they were stunning. But that was just the cool part of it. And don't get me wrong, right? Celebrations was cool. And when I was telling you a lot of the time why I thought it was going to be the best set ever, a lot of it was the cool stuff. These promos like Dragapult Prime and Zacian Level X and Greninja Star, that was amazing. The Classic Collection reprinting these old cards was amazing. And also for people that play old formats, having easier access to some of those cards. You know, Umbreon Star is a great example. Umbreon Star, hilariously expensive card, because it was only in a pop pack and it was really, really, really super expensive. But all of a sudden Celebrations came out and people could get an actual proper Umbreon Star card considerably cheaper than they could get the actual original version. But then we go back to the main set, and this was supposed to be, well, the clue's in the name. It was supposed to be a celebration. Celebration by name and celebration by nature. The cool promos, the reprints, all of that. It was supposed to be a fun set that celebrated the history of the Pokemon TCG. And even going back to, you know, the pairs like Kyogre and Groudon. That's what Celebrations did. They got a whole bunch of pairs of legendaries and went around with it. And we had the Pikachu I showed you a minute ago. And then we had Surfing Pikachu V and V Max and Flying Pikachu V and V Max. And then we had a bunch of legendaries. The thing is, something happened and this set became really, 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 really good. In terms of percentage of the set that saw legitimate play, probably the best set ever. And you can make an argument to me of, well, see, I don't think this is the coolest set ever. I prefer this set instead. And that's fine, but I think people like myself, you know, I like to phrase myself as a bit of a historian of the Pokemon TCG, and I have a history series on this channel to prove it. But for people like me that are really interested with a TCG from the beginning to the end, I don't think it's really possible to get much of a cooler set than this. But just in terms of playability, this wasn't supposed to be a good set. But look at what we got. I mean, if we go in order, we've got Kyogre. Now, Kyogre was a bit of a gimmick deck when it first came out. Discard the top 5 cards of your deck, choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. This does 50 damage for each energy card discarded in this way to each of those Pokemon. And when it came out, it was kind of a fun little meme deck and we went on with our lives. Except nowadays, we play it in Lost Box decks and we use it with Energy Recycler, and we put all of the energy back into the deck, and basically we end up in this situation where in the late game we fix it essentially so that our entire deck is just energy, and then we actually use Kyogre. And not as a gimmick, you know, Andrew Estrada won Pittsburgh Regionals recently using this deck. This is a legitimate great deck. It has been kind of central to the metagame for a while. It's great. But we can keep going. Flying Pikachu V Max. Yeah, won the World Championships last year. We got Flying Pikachu V, which is interesting with Fly, because it can give you immunity next turn. But then the V Max hits a decent weakness, but also prevents all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon, which is honestly pretty ridiculous. Surfing Pikachu V Max hasn't seen a huge amount of play in the West, but actually did see some play and success over in Japan, just as a lightning Pokemon that can attack for water energy. Mew has been an absolute staple in a bunch of decks. We're still seeing it. See a huge amount of play in Gardevoir decks, for instance, because of the ability Mysterious Tail. Let's look at the top 6 cards of your deck if it's active and find an item card. And like I say, today, we're still seeing this see a huge amount of play in, I mean, there's a bunch of decks, but Gardevoir would be one of them. This is a legitimate card which has seen a huge amount of play in a whole bunch of decks and has seen play, you know, starting from when it first came out, but literally continuing through today. It is kind of absurd, frankly, how much play this card has actually seen. Although, to be fair, it did look good at the beginning. But yeah, it looked good at the beginning. It's still carrying on now. We've seen Lunala see a little bit of play here and there because of Lunar Pain. Although, I'll be honest with you, that really is more of a fun little, it'll work occasionally thing than an actual legitimate deck. But Zacian V is not a fun little occasional thing. That is a legitimate deck. because we got Roar of the Sword that lets you accelerate a psychic energy from the deck to it, and then Storm Slash does 60 damage plus 30 more for each lightning energy attached to this Pokemon, still sees play in Gardevoir decks now. It is a legitimate part of that deck. And then we got Evil Tal, which for 2 energies got Cry of Destruction, discards up to 3 special energy from your opponent's Pokemon. And we've seen that in a bunch of different places, but we see it in control decks quite a lot even now. And I suppose you could count Professor's Research, but that's a little bit cheeky. But even if we take out the fringe cards like Lunala, and we don't count Professor's Research, that still gives us 8 genuinely, legitimately metagame impacting cards in this set. We got Kyogre, we've got Flying Pikachu and Surfing Pikachu. Remember, they count as 2 each because of the V, so now we're up to 5. Plus Mew puts us up to 6, Zacian puts us up to 7, and Evil Tal puts us up to 8. If we take the fringe cards away, we're left with 8 legitimate metagame impacting cards from 25. Like, a third of this set is genuinely good. And I started this video telling you all about all the fun things Celebrations did, and all the cool gimmicks, and the history of the game, and the reprints, and all the stuff that makes us go, wow, that's really cool. But then we end talking about the fact that it was a legitimate, brilliant, playable deck. And that's weird, ladies and gentlemen. That's weird. There is a really, and you know, what's best is subjective, right? Now, if we're talking about percentage of the cards in the set that are actually genuinely viable, then yes, it's got to be number 1. It's got to be number 1. But if we take that away, then it's basically personal preference, right? But I'm telling you now, there is a very, very, very strong argument that this will go down as the greatest set ever. And I love it, ladies and gentlemen. I absolutely love it. So there we go. That's what you need to know. And now it's over to you guys. Do you agree that Celebrations is one of the best sets ever? Do you think it's the actual best set ever? Do you think it's overrated? And of course, give me reasons for all of it. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all kinds of fun things. Oh, and of course, get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Jelena Renji, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and seems to be a very lovely, awesome person. So shoutouts to them for being lovely and awesome. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.